torturous way to do things, Jack. I mean, if I want to forgive someone, I forgive them. I don't need to actually have a son who is actually myself and then convince someone else to torture and kill them, and therefore, that's great. Now I can forgive you. Does seem rather, how shall we say, it does seem kind of redundant. There seems to be a lot of unnecessary steps in there. If I can do it, then why can't a divine being do it,
And then there's not even a goal.
If you want to forgive someone, a box of chocolates, some flowers, and some sweet talk gets the job done, You don't have to torture and kill people.
We're still being judged as if that whole resurrection thing never happened. So what was the significance of it? We're still being judged by our gullibility, and I know you said it's not gullibility, but if we are saved by grace, and in the context here, grace is supposed to mean faith, and faith is an absolute conviction that isn't necessarily supported by evidence. It's just you believe because you believe, regardless of evidence. I don't get it. There's no way that I can rationalize that to make sense.
Back to you, Jack. Did you want to comment on that?
I understand that Aaron Ra has his own set of experiences regarding Christianity. I don't share them. I became a Christian when I was 16 and 17 years old, and his characterization of Christianity is not mine. And I think my YouTube channel, Together for Peace, demonstrates over the 5 years I've been on how distinctly different Aaron Ra's understanding of Christianity and mine is. So.
Well, somebody just said in the chat room that I'm coming from false premises. I would love to see somebody demonstrate how my premise is false. Consider that a challenge.
I wouldn't say it's so much. I wouldn't say it's so much false as, you're coming from your own perspective, and you. Honestly, it just seems as though what I hear when you criticize Christianity is I hear your personal experiences, which is fine, but I don't. There's not much in terms for me to say. Reason with, except for me to respond back and say, well, that hasn't been my experience. So
okay, well, I'm not talking about personal experience. I didn't mention a personal experience other than what people have told me. Believers like yourself have explained to me why they believe, and they haven't given me a reason that could compel me to believe too. They've given me things that do not make sense, and reverence of books that can't be rationalized to make sense. And they compare them to other books which have the same kind of arguments supporting them as you have supporting yours. And if theirs don't make the mark, why do yours? And why would a God capable of designing DNA be such a piss-poor author as to write this whole collection of books, or any one of them? I don't mean to be offensive for the sake of being offensive, but when I don't know. I'm gonna leave it to somebody more.
Well, I think it raises an interesting issue, Jack, because this is something that you and I discussed some months ago. How is it possible to have a discourse with someone who is a theist without upsetting them, if they get upset by the most innocuous statements? For example, a bus campaign in which the banner along the side of the bus said, "You can be good without God," which is a statement of fact, a provable statement of fact. And people boycotted the bus because of that, because they were so outraged and offended. How can you have a discourse with someone who takes offense so easily?
Admittedly, it's very challenging. I engage with discourse with people who have said very abrasive sorts of things, and that's okay. I'm not. Whether I'm offended by, I rarely even use such words. The idea of being offended. Like when Aaron Ra expresses his frustration, I know I understand exactly what he's expressing. I understand. I just don't feel as though that's where he's coming from, and I know he wants someone to present him with reason that can give him he wants a good reason for someone to present him.
So I'm very sorry to interrupt you, Jack. The next caller's in the room. Can you mute your microphone until we come to you, please, because we're getting some background noise from you. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jack. Do carry on.
So I understand all those things. I'm human, right? So I understand the struggle with the questions and the perspectives. I'm just saying I have a different one than Aaron Ra. So I'm not offended by what he has to say. And I think that there's room to talk about it. But I mean, if we're going to have a conversation about it, well, then at some point there just has to be, we have to take it sort of one step at a time, not throw a bunch of assertions out.
Okay, well, I'm not throwing assertions, but I do want to be clear on something. I mean, you said if I want to be with God, then when I'm dead, I would be with God. But that is if I assume that God exists, okay? But even when I did assume that God exists, I made the mistake of reading the Bible, and it was no longer possible for me to want to be with God, because the Bible does not paint a God I could worship or respect or admire in any capacity. If I were to admire, respect, or love God, it would have to be a completely different deity than the one that was in your book. Again, I'm just going to try to calm down, shut up.
Yeah, I mean, my real problem here, Jack, is the narrative that you're putting forward here is internally inconsistent. You have this almighty, super powerful being that can create the universe in, for some reason, 7 days, not an instant. But, I mean, there in itself, you get these internal inconsistencies. When it's to the point where I can handle social interactions better than the God in your narrative, then it's internally inconsistent, and internal inconsistencies are signs of things being wrong. Right now, you have this refuge that, well, we all have different life experiences, and therefore, all views of life can be equally valid. Well, that's an opinion that you can hold. But the thing is that when you go into the narrative of the models of science, the descriptive models of science, they get shit done. And this is something that religion doesn't. Right? That's the principal difference between these two.
And it's not just that, because it's not my opinion that the Bible says that disbelief is the only thing that will be punished. Now, you tell me, Jack, is God worthy of admiration, of adulation, of appreciation, if he makes a mandate wherein you have to believe the most unbelievable claims from the least credible people, or I will punish you forever? Tell me, just tell me straight out, if you think that is an appreciable statement, if it's justified that anybody should go to hell for any reason, but particularly because they couldn't make themselves believe what could not be believed by any rational person.
Your question to me...
Sorry, go on, Jack, and then we're going to take the next caller. You first, Jack.
So your question to me, Aaron Ra, is if someone cannot believe the God of the Bible because they have an understanding of what reason and rationality is, and they cannot give up that in order to believe in God, is it fair for this God to allow for that person to go down the path they want to go?
No. Is it fair that God himself in Revelations promises to punish these people because they don't believe the priests selling this nonsense? No, it's not the path I want to go down. The path I want to go down is just let me die normal, regular, like everybody else is supposed to. But you have a threat wherein I cannot do that, wherein I will be tortured in hell forever because I could not believe impossible claims by non-credible people. Is it fair that God could damn anybody for not believing?
I want to clarify that it's not me who has a threat for you, and during this conversation,
right, it's
not
the
once.
Bible. So let's specify. Right. It is not you. It is the Bible. It's not my personal experience. It's what the Bible says. It's not your interpretation. It's what the Bible says. It's clear. It's verbatim. Tell me whether you think that's fair.
I think whatever God decides is fair. And however you play
and
that
God
out.
decided that he was going to damn, torture forever anybody that could not make themselves believe that which could not be believed by any rational person. Now answer yes or no. Is that fair?
Answered your question.
Okay.
So,
Okay, if that's the answer, we've got the next caller, and it's Prog Nemesis. Are you with us?
Good evening.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Fine. Actually, that's not my name. It's my boyfriend's name. I'm on his account now.
Oh, well, I won't pry into your personal life. How can we help you?
It's no big problem. No, it's fine. I was wondering about the world ending. Actually, is it I kind of lost my entire question in everything what was going on.
That's all right. Take your time. Whilst you're talking about the end of the world, I've got a prediction that the world will come to an end. And I know that I'm absolutely right. It'll probably take about another 5 billion years. But when the sun starts expanding, when it runs out of fuel, we'll be eaten up and everything will be gone. So that is an accurate end of world prediction.
You remember that when Harold Camping came up with his description, he was talking about how this May 21st was supposed to be 7,000 years to the date after the flood, right? Well, the amusing thing is that the world's only supposed to be 6,000 years old, but this is 7,000 years after the flood, and the flood was supposed to have been 1,000 years or so after the world had been created. So let's just ignore that the fact that the math already is messed up. But from what I estimate, 7,000 years from the date that the flood actually happened, which was the limited flood that was centered on the city of Shuruppak in Iraq at the end of the Jemdet Nasur in 2900 BC, would mean that if you wanted to take that a day in the life of God is 7,000 years, and then you wanted to add 7,000 years from the date that the flood of Shuruppak actually occurred, then it would be, I think, 4100 CE is the year you're actually looking for. So we got quite a long time before that happens.
Well, even when I May the 21st was approaching, I sought comfort in the font of all knowledge and rationality, namely Venom Fang X, and watched a video about what he had to say about the rapture, and he assured me that whilst the rapture could happen at any time, Judgment Day wouldn't happen for at least 1,007 years. But he did say something could happen any time in the next, I don't know, maybe 50 or 100 years. And what surprised me most of all is he actually said it with a straight face. Back to the caller. Have you managed to remember what your point was?
No, but I did come up with a different question still around my point.
Okay.
Isn't it still a little bit arrogant if the world would end that we would still go to heaven, hell, or wherever?
Is it arrogant? Absolutely.
I mean, are you approaching it on the basis that it's arrogant of humans to consider that they are a species over and above anything else, and it's not just a temporary spell where we seem to be on top of the evolutionary ladder, a spell which I suspect is going to be remarkably short-lived? Is that what you're coming at?
Actually, yes. What is it everybody wants to accomplish with the world ending?
That's a good point, because they celebrate the end times, don't they? They get really excited. Isn't it exciting? We're living in the end times. Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, I had to grow up with this kind of end-of-the-world philosophy being thrust upon me all the time. I was told that the governments are all going to collapse and the banking systems are all going to fail, and all this was going to happen any day now, and there's all these great apocalypses coming, so you don't need to worry about your college education or saving up for a future or trying to get any kind of a meaningful career. Instead,